Welcome to Innerviews. This is Sahil, and I have Tasneem Hamdani with me. She is a Tantra teacher and Kashmiri Shaivism practitioner. You've been practicing Kashmir Shaivism for a while now, and you've been teaching Tantra for about 4 years, Tasneem, right?
Yes, that's right. Kashmir Shaivism, I've been studying for a little over a year now
Hmm.
in Kashmir and Rishikesh. And Tantra, I've been teaching for, about 4 to 5 years. Uh, Full time, I've been a Tantra practitioner and teacher
How did
since
you
2019.
how did you get into teaching Tantra? But that can be a second question. What exactly is Tantra? According to you, how do you describe Tantra? Because there's so many connotations attached to it. Everybody looks at
Yes.
it in such a different way. How does a Tantra teacher look at it?
So that's a great question because every teacher will have a different definition for you what Tantra is. And that's because it's a felt experience. And while there are scriptures and studying Shaivism and Tantra in the West have both given me a definition and an understanding of structure, the actual understanding of Tantra is completely my felt experience. And to me, it's the understanding of energy. We call it Shakti. And in the Shaivism philosophy, Shiva and Shakti are, well, what we understand them as masculine and feminine principles. They're actually consciousness and energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how they're polarities of the same aspect, where consciousness is stillness and um,
The observer.
deeply in meditation, and Shakti is in motion and dynamic. So the
Hmm.
understanding of how energy moves within the body,
Hmm.
outside the body, how we interact with our environment energetically, and then specifically how in interpersonal dynamics and uh, intimacy, especially how energy can play and work in those environments.
So, how did you get on the journey of becoming a Tantra teacher? Why did you? What was the moment where you said that, okay, I'm going to teach this full time? How did that shift happen? Can you give a little background of what you were doing and how did you enter this field?
Sure, yeah, I love telling that story because it's like Tantra chose me, the path chose me to walk on it, and I just had to say yes. How it happened was I was already into yoga and meditation and starting to also unpack my relationship with my sexuality. And I entered in the West from the perspective of what we call Neo Tantra, which is more of a sacred sexuality approach to Tantra. And then there's also the traditional Tantra here in the East, which is more esoteric practices from the lineage and scriptures, Kashmir Shaivism being one of those lineages.
Mhm.
So in the West, I entered from a sacred sexuality perspective. And at that time, I was already in this place where I was unpacking and unraveling what I've been conditioned and told about my own body, my own sexuality, being a woman raised in India and then living in America for a few years at that point. I was in that place. And then my friend told me that my Tantra teacher was coming into town for a weekend seminar. And the minute I heard that word Tantra and this teacher and this weekend, I just clicked on. It's like, you see in movies when they get the right passcode in the bank robbery movies and suddenly all the levers fall into place, click, 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 click. That's what happened. So in hindsight, I feel like it was all the chakras aligning. Everything went yes, green light.
Mhm.
And so I had to do that weekend. And then I felt really at home at this weekend seminar. It was an introductory 2-day seminar. And I just felt like, oh, finally, there are other people who
Hmm.
think like I do and who
Hmm.
understand what I have been experiencing my whole life.
Hmm.
So it kind of felt like a soul remembering more than a learning.
Hmm.
Felt like my body already had all of this wisdom and now there was language and technique around it.
Hmm.
So I just went deep into the study of Tantra. I did some teacher trainings, I did immersive courses, I assisted my then teacher at several seminars. And that just felt like the most authentic me. And then when I was going back into my corporate life, which was a corporate accountant in New York City, that felt like the Matrix. That felt like I just, but the Matrix, but the actual Tantra reality was the juicy part with all the delicious food and the experience and the sensation.
Mm.
And then the office was like the dull blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, why? But I was on a visa, so I kind of like was trying to plan my transition. But then it came to a point where I could either apply for a green card and stay in corporate for another 5, 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
or I could just quit now and just be a full-time tantrika. And
Mm.
the latter just kind of felt more obvious, even though it was a risky choice. And I kind of jumped off without a safety net and landed straight into the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It was still, I would do it all over again. And the
Mm.
thing that really gave me the confidence was every time I did make the time and effort in my corporate life to give a Tantra class or have even a practice session or a healing session, it just lit me up so much, and it was received really well. And it just was like truly my calling. And then I went to Burning Man, and I was in a camp where we are all Tantra teachers. It's called Naked Heart.
Mm.
And just being part of that camp and being surrounded by like a community of Tantra educators, I realized that that was really like, this could be my life all the time. And that is the concept of Burning Man. We take the playa to our real lives.
Mm.
And so that's when that seed was planted, that fire was stoked to really take this out into my real life and make that my real life. So
Mm.
that was kind of like the final.
How did you have taken so many workshops and so many festivals, led so many festivals? What are the experiences that people have, and how does it change their life? What exactly happens in the process when they come and they learn? How would you define it? How do you describe it, rather? What are the things that
Mhm.
they experience? How does it change their life? And some experiences that you might want to share.
Sure. So I'll share this from both perspectives together. One of being a student in the earlier years and attending such festivals myself and my own awakening through that. And now holding space for others through the festivals we co-create and, you know, holding space for others to have the same journey. Because even now, I don't feel that we're ever sitting on a pedestal teaching. We're in the circle with them, in the journey with them. So we're all taking that journey together, even though now I'm in this position of holding space. So I'll just speak from both perspectives simultaneously. What happens is you get a sense of what your true nature is, and you have a environment where you're really free to be that way. And it's just energy, how you are energetically, without the brain going, blah blah, without the conditioning of how this should be, or I am an engineer or accountant, hence I should act like this, or I am a man of this age, hence this is appropriate for me. All of those kind of fall off, the conditioning and the boxes, and you're just empowered to be authentically your whole self without judgment and full acceptance. And I have found that that has been the key to my own journey as well as others, is when that kind of safe space is available for people to experience who they authentically are, and then have the freedom to express it and live as that. That's when we can really shine in our whole power. And
Mm.
that's like a switch that comes on. Once it's on, once you can't unknow, you
Mm.
can't unlearn. It's that kind of awareness that you remember your true nature, which according to Shaivism philosophy is divine essence. It's oneness.
Mm.
We are omnipresent, omnipotent, like Shiva, and we are all of it within us all the time. And so it's just a matter of kind of realizing that that is our nature. And how that can come about is through several different paths. One of the paths, which is my path, is of embodiment. So when we let go of the chatter of the mind and listen to the wisdom of the body, there's deep intelligence that can actually guide our way back to our soul.
Mm.
Um, Another path would be of mantras and chanting and evoking the divine through these invocations. Another path might be yoga, asana, pranayama, dharana, all of these techniques that can bring us to the space of centering, where we're really centered and connected to the divine in us, which is the path of really, an example of that is when you're breathing in and out, the space between the breath in and the breath out, that emptiness, that void is our connection to source. So those moments, so however those moments can come about, where you see the veil of Maya kind of lifted, and in Shaivism, we say that Maya is also a Shakti. It's not an illusion. It's also something that deliberately was created to experience this kind of lila, this play of divine energy and consciousness playing with each other. So how it can, again, back to your question, how it can come about in these spaces is, when there is freedom and trust and safety, people can really have permission to go deep. And once they do, then there is full acceptance of what they find there. And that is kind of a affirmation that we often miss in the default world or society as we know it, where we're not really empowered to be authentic. So that can be the difference.
There's a lot of sexual connotation attached to Tantra. And from what you're talking about, it seems completely non-sexual from the practices that you're describing. What is if I have to be a bit direct about it, what is the sexual angle to Tantra and how does it help people?
Mm-hmm. So that is actually, like I said, my entry point was sacred sexuality. So that is one of the techniques that is given amongst many. And then there's another technique that expands on this. So let's say 2 techniques out of 112 in the Vigyan Bhairav. And the Vigyan Bhairav Tantras are the scriptures. Mm-hmm. And that's from the Kashmir Shaivism lineage. The Vigyan Bhairav Tantra is considered to be the transmission. In the north, they say Shiva gave to Shakti. In the south, they say Shakti gave to Shiva.
Wow.
My feeling is that it happened in union, when they were in union in this position of Shakti sitting in Shiva's lap and all of their chakras connecting, the knowledge of oneness came to be. And that was the Vigyan Bhairav is the written scripture version of that knowledge. And so there were practices around it, which again, it's all a play of Shiva Shakti, which does exist in polarity in the human body. When there is a male-bodied person and a female-bodied person, there is a certain amount of obvious polarity, and we feel that in our day-to-day life in the form of attraction or chemistry, however you call it. That's clearly energetic polarity. So like in energy terms, and you'll hear tantrics often say everything is energy, right? So what does that mean? So if you just strip back the conditioning and blah, blah, what energetic terms, it's polarity. And so a lot of the practice of Tantra can be experienced through experiencing the unity by way of this polarity. When the polarity melts away in unity, and which you will probably notice when you are holding someone close and looking in their eyes, in a very deep moment of intimacy, it's kind of like everything else melts, and you kind of lose sense of who you are and where your body finishes and theirs begins. And you're just in this, it's only the space between you that exists. And that's that unity, So that was in the esoteric practices, couple of the practices given around meditating on sexual union and also sublimating that sexual energy. So I'll talk about the sublimating in a separate note, but to your question directly, is that meditating on sexual union in that way, where you realize the oneness through the union of two. And so what has happened in the West now, these practices have become very prevalent because there is a certain culture of freedom around sexuality in the West, which we don't have so much in our culture. And it's in fact repressed, So here we focus more on the non-sexual practices because the sexual part is hush-hush. And actually why that is because it was passed down in secret, because it is a very powerful practice. And people can, in the wrong hands, it can be like anything powerful, you don't want it to get in the wrong hands. So it has been passed down in a kind of a secrecy from lineage, and somewhere down the line, because of the repression around sexuality, it has gotten corrupted or lost. And then in the West, at the same time, this has really like just taken off the sacred sexuality aspect. And So that's what now we're getting Tantra back from the West, just like Yoga Sutras, yoga and everything. It had to go out to come back.
Hmm.
So in that acquiring Tantra back from the Western cultures, we're acquiring the sacred sexuality aspect of it. But if we look at what's already been in our traditions, there is a lot of, again, so like out of the 112, two are sexual and the 110 other practices are not sexual. So and all of these are past. What the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, it's actually the practices that Osho has illuminated on in the Book of Secrets, which has been one of his most famous works and which has been the biggest following of Osho is around these practices. So these, there is a lot of, and then again, Osho has also brought a significant amount of light to, rather than repressing sexuality, embracing it. And that, at that time was like all the rage. So it's kind of like that thing where one little aspect has become all the rage because it is the most controversial and denied aspect of our existence, isn't it?
When you say it's powerful, and that's the reason why it's been kept secret, what kind of power are you talking about? And if it has been in secret, how is it being figured out now, or how is it being found out? Two separate questions you can answer individually.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this question I'll answer also with coming back to the sublimating of energy, right? That I had hinted on. So, and yeah, let's be a little bit controversial, shall we?
Why not?
Why is this powerful? Because I feel personally, in my experience, that sexually liberated people cannot be controlled. So when we have freedom in that way, where we are sovereign with our sexual energy, there is like, we are not lusting, we are not chasing, we cannot be controlled, we cannot be told that our bodies and faces aren't perfect the way they are, and so we must buy products. We can't be told that the men must perform a certain way, and then hence they must buy certain products as well. And we cannot be, and there's a whole porn industry that is also benefiting from this, people being repressed. So there is a lot of freedom that is taken away when our sexuality is repressed, because it limits our ability to be who we are authentically. Also, it's power because it's pure potential. It's life force energy. You think about, clinically speaking, one sperm and one egg combined to make a whole human our size. And it's not an equal exchange of matter. It's coming from a microscopic amount of matter to a lot of mass. So that's pure potential. And that is all of the design of creation. So everything is the same pattern, fractals of the same reality. May it be a seed germinating into a plant, or may it be the whole universe coming from a big bang, a cosmic singularity. Is that same idea of pure potential that can create a lot. So that energy, when we can transmute it and sublimate it, which means rather than just dissipating out to have sex and ejaculate and then be done with it, we can actually breathe and bring that energy up through the rest of our body. There are techniques, and that's what the sexual aspect of Tantra has gotten popular for. There's also techniques in Taoism, in the ancient Chinese around this, that have educated us how to do this. So when we're able to bring that energy, that's Kundalini Shakti, which is very, very powerful. It's life force energy. And when we can channelize that, like, you must feel the difference between a turned on person and the power they exude, when any of these famous personalities, and you just look in their eyes and you feel like they're turned on. They're not like, their sexual energy isn't hiding. It's being worn on their sleeve and being channelized as their creation, as their business, as whatever it is, And so that is the power of sexual energy, which when we can have in the right way, or right or wrong is a judgment, but channelized toward the intention of creating and manifesting and healing, can be very potent. And at the same time, when it's channelized toward maybe manipulating or overpowering or, kind of hypnotizing in a way, then it can also be channelized for people to get what they want because they know how to play with other people's desire and their lust and their sexual energy and kind of have them submit to their own agenda. So that's what I mean with power. Either way it can be used.
Interesting.
And what was your second question?
The second question is, if it's being
How
kept
is
in
it being?
secret, how is it
Yeah.
being revealed or understood?
Yeah, so there has been a lineage of Dakinis and Dakas.
Dakinis and Dakas.
Dakini. So Dakini is also a term that is considered in Black Tantra like the magician or the witch. But if you think about like the Vajra Yogini, Vajra Dakini, these are the divine feminine figures that are known to travel between realms. So they are able to travel between the dimensions of the divine and the earthly. And so that is the term Dakini or a Daka. And what it translates to in this tantric culture or the culture in the West that I associate with Tantra is the healer, a medicine man or a medicine woman. And my understanding is so there's a lot of secrecy and hush-hushness around this still. My understanding is along the lineage there was a path where in the masculine lineage it was being passed from father to son or teacher to disciple, and that got written down, and that's the written accounts, which is why it is a very masculine approach to Tantra. And then in the feminine side of the lineage, it was being passed down by word of mouth in secret from one mother to daughter, and then from priestess to priestess. So when you hear the term tantric priestess, it's the lineage of initiation. So it's a tantric initiation, which you may have heard of in yoga and kriya and other lineages where there's an initiation where a guru initiates you and then you get to learn the practices.
Right.
Same with Tantra. There is an initiation in some way where you kind of get the transmission, but rather than it being like a specific mantra or a specific practice, it's more of a, just connecting you back to your truth. And then you are empowered from that place to find your own path. And so how that is being passed on, some people have, done the work over the years to really understand the sexual practices and cultivate their own understanding. My teacher being one of them, he's been practicing for 40 plus years. They've cultivated, they got the initiation and then they've cultivated their own understanding of how sexual energy and all of this channelization works, and have done their part to transmit that knowledge. And then those of us who are learning are now doing our part to actually learn from our own experience. So I would say, like anything I learn from books or teachers is secondary. The thing that I can really transmit to others is what I learned from my own experience. So practicing that, in intimacy, in partnership, in relationships, in friendships, just practicing that level of awareness, kind of like a yoga of intimacy. And from that, the experience then creates the knowing.
Wow. I think that's always been the bedrock of Indian spirituality, where experience has been the teacher rather than words. Teachers have just come and shown us the way to experience, and that becomes your teacher then. I guess that's exactly what's happening in this case as well. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Tasneem. This was very enlightening. Even though I've known you, we've not really we have had interesting conversations, but I think I got to learn a few things about you in this conversation as well. So I'm really glad you're practicing what you're doing. I will share your details or anything else that you'd like to tell to the audience, whoever will watch this, about Tantra, or how they can get in touch with you regarding this.
Sure, yeah. So I will, by the way, it's 3:33 p.m. So that's an angel number for you, 333. So yeah, I will be happy for you to share my Facebook page, and then people can send me a message on Messenger. I use that more than Insta, and if they can mention that they saw this interview and have reached out, give me some context, so I know to filter those out of the randoms. I will be very happy to get in touch. And then also on my Facebook page, you can see whatever I'm creating. We have our next festival coming up in Kasol in the end of May, which is going to be the Electric Mahadev Psytrance Festival that they have every year, sandwiched between 3 days of Tantra at the beginning and 3 days of live music and jamming and integration at the end.
Beautiful.
So that'll be our next presentation, and we'll keep continuing. We're also scheduled to be in this beautiful retreat center called Monam in Hyderabad in September
in India
for a retreat in India. So yeah, you can stay connected on the page for more information.
Right.
And yeah, I offer sessions and workshops in group settings, also private healing and coaching. And yeah, also very happy to guide people to the right resources, because I know it's a very vast set of resources out there. Yeah, right. And it's an infinite subject. There's infinite knowledge on it. So, you know, based on where you are on your path and what you're seeking, there's one specific path. It's kind of like a mountain, you know, you take any number of infinite paths, they all lead to the top. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's whatever path you feel the most called to. So yeah, also happy to guide you on that.
Thank you. I will share your details on our Telegram group as well. If you guys also want us to interview someone and bring forth a practice that is that you know about, you would want to learn about, or has influenced or shaped your life in any way, please connect with us on our Telegram group, and we will try to interview someone from that lineage, from that practice. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Tasneem, for coming here and sharing your time and sharing your experiences with us. Pleasure having you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, love.
Thank you all for tuning in to Interviews. Now we will continue with the party in the metaverse. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop us on the Telegram group or here in the chat group. Thank you all for coming here and tuning in. This is Sahil signing out.